for joining us this evening. I am joined here tonight by members of the village board. There's trustee Renee Howell is here with us, trustee Omar Andino, and new mayor Danny Lang. Signed in. The purpose of tonight's meeting here at the community center, as you can see, Dan Watson and Jasmine are going to speak to you about the Sustainable Westchester program. Please ask them a million questions. This program will involve the village board at some point in time, but Dan, of course, is going to cover that area as well. So this is very interesting. So please ask them all the questions you want, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Mayor. And so I'm Dan Welsh, and Jasmine Graham and I are kind of the front end of this program. So as we do these community events, how much you know, Chip? Just do these community events, they're likely to see the two of us. And to start, just kind of reintroduce, Sustainable Westchester is a municipal consortium. It's a 501c3 nonprofit, but it's a membership nonprofit. So is this loud enough? Am I doing this right? So the members are the municipalities, municipalities in Westchester, of which Tuckahoe is one of 45, and all but 2 are now members of Sustainable Westchester, and also, as of a couple of years ago, the county itself joined. So they are the members who oversee the board, and the board oversees us, the operating unit. Our physical location is Mount Kisco, and as I say, our job is to create shared service sustainability programming for our member municipalities and to help them move the needle on their sustainability objectives. And obviously to do that in a way that creates a lot of value for the residents of those communities as well. There's a lot of programming going on. We're going to focus on Westchester Power today, but other than that, we're working in the building energy area as well, and today that's under the name of the Heat Smart program. Heat Smart is a statewide initiative which is funded by NYSERDA, and the object there is to promote alternative heating technologies to move people away from fossil fuel wherever possible, and typically it's through the use of air source or ground source heat pumps plus efficiency measures. So that's going on also in Westchester County now, and it became a big hot thing when the gas moratorium started, and everybody was freaking out because they weren't sure how they had a building project halfway in, but they didn't have their gas connection yet. So we have a team which is out there doing workshops with commercial developers and municipal leaders, trying to educate them on these alternatives. A lot of times it's just that the contractors don't even know about them. So that's a great program. Community solar, you'll hear a little bit more about today, but that's another program which has kind of developed off of some of our solar activity. We of course are working in the waste management and recycling area, the zero waste, and my colleague Neha Danik is promoting various ways for municipalities to help facilitate the decrease of the amount of stuff they're sending to the landfills. There's a great program there which is based on a phone app called Recollect, and it allows people to know their recycling schedules, look up where you can get rid of any type of thing you can imagine, and it reduces the labor of the municipality because they don't get as many phone calls for that stuff. And then we have the Clean Transportation Program. Many of you may have seen some of the ads we put out about the discounts that we've negotiated with Nissan to help people get into electric vehicles, and we're just trying to educate people on that, support our municipalities in their desire to electrify their fleet and serve as models for this. And so we've helped a lot of municipalities put in chargers and identify areas in their fleet where they might be able to logically move to electric transportation. So a full portfolio of services, and really importantly, the relationship with committees and communities like yours is critical, because honestly, a lot of the best ideas come out of those communities, and you'll see it like some of your neighbors, obviously, like on the waste side, composting. Scarsdale has really lit a fire around drop-off composting, and when that happens, we try to help make that fire spread even further. So I'm going to pass the clicker over to Jasmine, and she's going to tell you about how this Westchester Power program works.
I don't know how to do this, so bear
sorry.
with me. Yeah, I told him to switch it for me, but... So I'm Jasmine Graham, and I'm going to talk to you about the Westchester Power Program. Yeah, that's a good night. Thank you. All right, so Westchester Power is called a Community Choice Aggregation, and essentially CCA. It's a program that exists in many other states. We were the first of our kind in New York State. So first, I'm just going to give you a little primer on understanding electricity and how that works with CCA. So currently, when you get your electricity bill, you've got delivery and supply. Most times, if you haven't made any kind of decision, you just call the utility to set up your power. Both of those will come from Con Edison. But anyone has the ability to go out and choose their own electricity supplier. We've been able to do that for 2 or 3 decades, but not a lot of people actually have. There's a lot of reasons for that. There's hundreds of ESCOs to choose from. You don't really know what a good price is. There's a lot of predatory practices with ESCOs. So CCA was created to basically be an easier way to get green power. All right, so with the Westchester Power Program, cities, towns, and villages join together to buy electricity in bulk for their residents and their small businesses. Because we have a large buying power, we're able to set the criteria. So in the past, we've wanted 2 supply options, a green and a standard. We also have wanted fixed rates and a pricing target. So currently, for our current contracts, that pricing target was the energy supply companies had to give us a rate that was lower than the previous 12 or 24-month Con Ed average. So we go out for this bidding process. And one of the first questions that we get is, so if we were to join, what changes and what remains the same? And the only thing that changes is your supplier. And your supplier on the bill, and now you have a renewable energy option. Most of the municipalities, as I'll explain later, chose the green supply. And so when you get your bill, your delivery, your billing stay the same. If there's any kind of disruption, if you have an outage, you still call Con Ed. They're still responsible for delivering electricity to your house because they own the wires and the poles. And it still comes on one bill, but you'll have on like the 4th page, it'll say your electricity supply details, and it'll have the name of whichever ESCO wins the bidding process, and you'll see your rate, which is, because we've always chose a fixed rate, it'll be the same rate every month. The other thing that people ask is, how does the program enrollment work? So in order to actually guarantee to these energy suppliers that are bidding to supply our program, in order to guarantee that we're going to have a lot of customers, CCAs in New York State and everywhere else, in order to be successful, they're structured as opt-out programs. So what that means is every eligible resident, which would be residential and small commercial accounts, and you'll see on your bill if you're EL1 or EL2, that's a residential or small commercial account. And if you're with Con Edison, then you are eligible to be in the program as long as you're not in an assistance heating program. Anybody who is already contracted with an ESCO is not eligible to be in the program because we wouldn't want to pull you out of a pre-existing contract, nor are we able to. So each eligible resident would receive a letter that says, hey, the Village of Tuckahoe decided to be a part of this program. This is the supplier that was chosen, this is the rate that was chosen, the green supply is your default, and if you don't want to be in the program, there's a 30-day window for you to do your research and opt out. And there's several ways to opt out and make it easy for you. In that letter, it comes with a little card that's pre-filled out. You just have to sign and put it back in your mailbox. Or you can go online or you can call our office. But it is an opt-out program. So right now, there's 27 municipalities in the program, both in the lower part of Westchester, which is Con Ed utility territory, and also in the northern part of the county, New York State Electric and Gas. Altogether, we've got about 115,000 customers, and these are our member municipalities right now. So 24 out of 27 of those municipalities have chosen the green supply. So what are the benefits of Westchester Power? Advocacy and education, cost control and stability, we're a vetted community program, and we're mitigating climate change. So the first thing that we always try to explain to people is we're a nonprofit, we're not an ESCO. ESCO is an energy service company or an energy supply company. We're vetted by the municipality, and you don't have to sift through hundreds of ESCO offerings. You know, there's no sneaky termination fees. Your price isn't going to skyrocket after 6 months because you weren't paying attention. There's no month-to-month billing or anything like that. In between contracts, because you have a fixed rate through the length of a contract. The contract could be 2 years, 3 years, depending on how we get the best bid. We always go with the lowest price. But between contracts, you will always receive a communication before there's any kind of rate change. You get an official notice. There's always going to be the Village of Tuckahoe seal on it. You know that it's not spam. You know that it's not an ESCO solicitation or anything like that. Cost control and stability. So because it's a fixed rate program, you know what your rate is going to be. It actually blew my mind when I joined Westchester Power straight out of college, and I found out, because I had never paid an energy bill yet, and I found out your bill is whatever the cost of electricity is on the day that they read your meter. And so you and your neighbor could have your meter read a week apart and you paid a completely different price. And I don't know about you guys, but I never buy anything if I don't know the price. So this really, blew my mind. But it's a fixed rate program, so you know that the price doesn't fluctuate. In the past, we've used the utility rate over the past 12 and 24 months as the price to beat, right? We set a price not to exceed. If a bid doesn't come in under the price that we set, it's not compliant, and we won't go with that. And then it's competitive prices for green power. Some ESCOs will charge a lot of money for green power. We get a great rate, and on top of that, you're supporting New York State electricity. Advocacy and education. So as Dan said, our office is based out of Mount Kisco. You can call us 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. You can also email us 24/7. We'll only answer within the business hours of 9 to 5, but it'll be there, and we'll answer you first thing in the morning. We also have Spanish language customer service, and we do a lot of this kind of outreach. We not only talk about our program, but we teach people about their electricity bills. I didn't know how to read an electricity bill before I started working here, and a lot of people that call me don't know how to read their electricity bill either, and I don't blame them because it's very complicated. So we take as much time as needed to answer your questions. I think my personal record was 1 hour and 4 minutes. Dan has gone to somebody's house to read their meter because they were out of state and their bill was way too high, so he actually went and read their meter. And I made a house call to help somebody sign up for community solar. So, we're real people, we're a small staff. I grew up in Irvington, Dan's from Lewisboro, we're all Westchester residents. We're really here to help. But the big reason why we do this is to help the environment, to mitigate climate change. So 24 out of 27 of our municipalities have chosen a green supply, as I mentioned before. We have offset hundreds of thousands of metric tons of CO2. We help municipalities to meet their New York State climate goals. And also, being a member of the CCA means that that's one of the check boxes in order to meet the Clean Energy Community Certification. We can also help position people for grants. So by coming together, our scale, our market clout, by doing this together, actually gives us a seat at the table. We get to have a say in the decision-making process. And now we're at a point where New York State is looking at us sometimes. We've got a lot of people, we've got a lot of municipalities who want to do good, and so we actually get to be a part of that decision-making process. So far, we have offset a combined 605,000 metric tons of CO2, which is equivalent to 128,450 cars being taken off the road for a year, or 10 million tree seedlings grown for 10 years. That's personally my favorite comparison to make. But that's just the start. So Westchester Power is an amazing program that really provides the foundation for us to build in all these other environmentally beneficial programs. So one of those is community solar and also direct supply. But New York State has some really ambitious climate goals. I'm not going to go through all of it, but I will say that we have a vision for the future and we have a plan. So right now our green electricity is it's really difficult to explain greenness, right? But right now we use renewable energy certificates. And when we first started the program in 2016, that was national wind power, meaning for all of the electricity used by all of our green customers, an equal amount of wind power would be put onto the grid somewhere nationally. Now, in our next iteration, we're doing New York State renewable energy certificates, which means all of our electricity is matched by New York State hydropower. We're getting all of that electricity onto the New York State grid, but we want to localize it even more. So right now we've got community solar. Ooh, okay.
She hadn't seen this slide.
I hadn't seen this slide. I like it. So right now we've got community solar, and community solar is really exciting. It's basically a program where someone, a big warehouse could put panels all over its roof, solar panels all over its roof, and you can actually subscribe to that project without putting any solar on your roof, without having any of the upfront costs or anything like that. And you get a solar credit on your bill, and then you pay back that solar credit at a discount. So it typically is a 10% discount. And the best part about it is that it can be layered on top of the CCA, Community Choice Aggregation. So you can be in the Westchester Power Program, getting your electricity supplied through our program, fixed rate, for your electricity supply. And in addition to that, you can also sign up for community solar and get a 10% discount on the solar credits from your bill. By building community solar projects in and around Westchester, we're actually localizing not only the environmental benefits, but the economic benefits. And we want to move it a step further, which is a direct supply. Because our customer base is so big and there's not much room down here to build solar or to, we're not really in a position to build wind turbines. So we actually want to directly wheel green power down to Westchester. Because of technicalities, it'll have to go through Brooklyn and then bounce back up and all that. But, we're going to bring green power down here. And like I said before, our scale allows us to really have a seat at the table for these conversations. And people are listening, and they know. I know I skipped through that previous slide really quickly about the New York State climate goals, but our climate goals are very, very ambitious.
So I'd like to just, re-emphasize that this slide is maybe, in some sense, the most important because there's a whole evolutionary pathway that we need to follow in order to get to a completely green grid. And so the Westchester Power Community Choice Aggregation, that's like the first start. We're now engaging essentially every resident in this whole dialogue about energy, and they're immediately having an impact with their purchase of green energy. Is going into the New York grid, but it's as Jasmine said, at that level we're doing it through the purchase of renewable energy certificates. That's basically, since you guys are all environmentalists, we'll take it into the weeds a tiny bit more. When a wind generator produces power, they dump electricity out into the grid, and their electrons look like anybody else's electrons. They go through the New York ISO market mostly, and they get paid for their electrons. But they also can take essentially the fact that they have done so in a clean manner, and they register that with, in this case, it's the New York State General Asset Tracking System with it the DPS manages, and they're able to sell that to voluntary customers. And that's the green characteristics of the power. So that's the renewable energy certificate that we're going out there buying. By buying that, we're promoting the addition of more renewable energy out onto the grid. But in this case, it's kind of both disconnected, and those are up north. We still have our grid down here where there's still some fossil fuel in terms of the physical electrons here. So going forward, in order to execute down to the local grid level, we have to do what Jasmine was talking about. So we have a gentleman back in the home office, Michelle De La Fontaine, who's doing the groundwork on this. And again, because of our scale that we have now, we're in discussions with transmission operators and transmission developers, New York State agencies, and where the state has laid out this incredibly aggressive climate protection plan, they don't have a plan yet for how they're going to execute. So we took this to them and said, we do. And actually, if you look at the governor's State of the State address, he talks about transmission. That's because we put it into his ear through his energy advisor. And so this is a program which is, it's going to take another couple of years in the making, but we're talking to NYPA, the New York State Power Authority. The unique thing about the project as it's being scoped out is we're pushing to use existing NYPA right-of-way. So normally doing a transmission project is a big deal, and you have, to get through any given community, through some parkland or alienation or this and that, it's a big, huge deal. But this developer has got a plan to use existing right-of-ways, using what they call high voltage DC transmission, which means you can have it next to the AC and you don't have problems with that. So really complex, but extremely exciting, and we're having constant meetings with NYPA, with the agencies, trying to move this project along. We would not be able to do that if our communities had stepped forward and made it clear that that's our goal, to go green and to green the grid. So as I said, for me, this is the most important slide on the deck there.
Thank you, Dan. So I did talk about community solar, but we'll go through it a little more. It increases equity and access. You don't have to put panels on your roof. It's not expensive, etc. Helps meet climate goals, 10% savings. I mentioned all this. Okay, so how do we join, right? What are the steps to join? So the first step is always passing an enabling legislation, which the Village of Tuckahoe already did back in 2015 when the program was getting started. And then we're required to do at least 2 months of outreach. That's required by the Public Service Commission, which is the entity that oversees us. We're happy to do more than that. And that's ongoing, so this is obviously outreach, and we're happy to do a lot more, and finding out venues for that and all. If anyone has a great idea, we'd love to hear it. We'll be here after the meeting. Then we submit a package to the Public Service Commission that has the local law. It has a record of all of our outreach, and also it has a draft of the notification letter that residents would get. And then once we're approved, we can begin this RFP bidding process, which is request for proposals from the energy companies. Now, the City of Yonkers is also interested in joining the CCA, and the City of Yonkers is massive, as we all know. And so the Village of Tuckahoe would be able to, if the timelines were aligned, would actually be able to go out for a bid with the City of Yonkers, or you could decide to slide into our existing contract or wait until we rebid our Con Ed contract at the end of the year. So there's a lot of options, but I would say that probably the best one would be to go out for a bid with the City of Yonkers. And so this is the projected timeline that we gave for that. So that would mean that we would go out for bids around May. Assuming that they meet the bid criteria that we set out, then notification letters could be sent out in July, and residents could be enrolled in September on your first meter read date after September 1st on this current timeline. But we also know that things get stalled. Sometimes people want to do more outreach. We're really flexible, and our biggest priority always is that the residents are actually informed, because you don't want people to get this letter down the line and they're like, who's Westchester Power? I've never heard of them. I have no idea what's going on, So we try to get out there as much as we can, which is why I will ask all of you to go tell a friend when you leave here. And thank you. Happy to take any and all questions.
I have a question. We have we have several condominiums here in Tuckahoe. So if a resident of a condominium wanted to join, could they, or would not the whole entire condominium board have to agree to become part of the CCA?
The question was, do people who live in condominiums, would they be able to join the program, or would it have to be that the condominium joins? So essentially, as long as you pay your own account, you have your own account and you pay your own bill, you're eligible. So if electricity was included in the condo, then then it wouldn't be. But if you get your own bill and you pay your own bill, then you would be eligible.
So it's different from, say, solar, where you don't control your roof in a condominium generally, and you can run into issues there. Like put solar on, there are strictures against that. In this case, it's just a matter of whether you have a bill or not. Yeah.
Could you quickly put up the slide that shows the delivery and the supply, please?
It was all the way. I'm sorry. Oh, too far.
Okay, so does Con Edison get anything, any monetary compensation from the supply side for having me as a customer?
Typically.
So normally when they're supplying, it's essentially a pass-through. I think they get like a 1%, handling charge kind of thing.
Okay, so does Con Edison have a feeling either way where we should be? They would much rather us leave it alone. So I understand that correctly?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and one that comes up, and sometimes in a sort of conspiratorial sense, because you're wondering, maybe they consider us competition. I think that battle was already fought back when they deregulated, late 90s when the originally private supply question came on, the horizon, and they worked out the deal. They worked out the deal on stranded assets and things like that had to be. So today it's not an issue to them.
The delivery is a lot more important to them as they own, the wires and grid. And if you look at your bill, you'll always see that the delivery is more expensive than supply. Your supply, it's usually at least 3 cents more per kilowatt hour on the delivery side.
And that's going up now. You all heard the announcements that Con Ed want approval for a 3-year series of increases. That's on the delivery side, about 3% a year or something like that. We have no control over that. We're the energy portion of the bill only. So we can at least hold that flat.
What has been your experience with respect to the charge for those contracts that go out for 100% renewable and those who maybe go out for 75% renewable, 25% standard? What has been your experience in terms of the cost of the energy, the standard versus the green?
So right now our standard is it's not like any percent renewable. I mean, there's maybe,
It's just grid supply.
yeah, it's just grid supply. So, and then our other option is 100% renewable. So it's either 100% renewable or basically not renewable. But the price difference is 0.25 of a.
Yeah, it's like a third of a cent. Call it a third of a cent.
Yeah.
So it's not huge.
So it depends on your usage. Like on any given month, we've always said that the renewable wouldn't be more than maybe a few dollars than the standard, but and that would be if your usage was probably pretty high.
So I understand you. The contracts you would be offering would be 100% renewable. There's no 50, 75.
So there's only two.
There's
The way
only
that
two.
we've structured it thus far
Okay.
is that there's only 2 supply options. There's a standard supply,
Okay,
which is
got it.
basically non-renewable, and then 100% renewable. And so the municipality chooses the default supply. So when you get your notification letter, it'll say, Village of Tuckahoe has chosen hopefully green supply. But any individual customer actually does have the option to switch to the standard supply. We've had people who really need to pinch pennies, lost their job, they switched to the standard supply. And I've actually had someone call me back when they were in a better financial position and then switch back to the green supply. So any individual can do that. There's no cost to switch between supply options. There's no cost to leave the program, anything like that. So you can still make a decision that's right for you. But we find that from what the municipality chooses as a default, typically less than 1% of people actually take the time to switch, either opting up to the green or opting down to the standard.
So again, not to miss an opportunity to confuse you all, and but you're the environmentalist. So today we're buying RECs as we've described, and renewable energy certificates. There are different flavors of RECs. We're buying what they call from legacy facilities. These are hydro facilities that are already built. NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Agency, also has a tier 1 level. When somebody builds a new facility, they get to supply these RECs and get paid by NYSERDA at a tier 1 level, which is much more expensive. NYSERDA then turns around and requires of all the utilities and all the ESCOs that they buy a certain percentage. Today it's only like 2% or something. So they force everybody to buy. So there's like a market in these tier 1 certificates. We're buying the tier 2. Just recently there was a little scare, and it's not gone yet, that the governor was saying, wait a minute, or there was a proposal to have the tier 2 prices pegged to like 2/3 or 8/10 of the tier 1 price, so they would go up for us. That would have been a challenge. That's one, so there's that. There's also, when we get into the direct supply thing, right now we're working on parsing all the pieces of the cost that add up to a full retail supply when we're dealing with this, at this point, the transmission and everything, not just the energy. And in order to pull this off, some of these costs are not low. So we could end up in a position where maybe we come to our municipalities when this project comes online and say, look, we're going to recommend, say the tier 2 RECs go up, we're going to recommend that we go with what's going to be sort of on paper a 50% product, but your additionality, the impact you're having is going to be far greater because they're building new wind facilities just to service us and pipe it down here. So the whole green spectrum is something that can be nuanced, Now we don't have this conversation with every customer on the phone because their minds would, their heads would explode. Normally it's like you're buying green power, but so that's all in the back of our minds as we sort of evolve the program. Did that?
Is there enough green power supply in New York State to cover, like, if every municipality and county decided to go green here, that you can fulfill it in a renewable way?
Now, were the numbers? No, they weren't on that sheet. I think if we're going to fulfill those goals and reach, 70% renewable, 100%, it's like 6 terawatts of new generation that has to be built. It's an incredible, almost a moonshot kind of thing. So, is there enough today? No. But we're all, it's a push and pull thing. We're pushing the market now, right? To say, okay, we're here. We want to go that way. We're putting our money where our mouth is. We're organized. But that capacity is not on the ground today. No. Yes, that's a lot of work to do.
So if you get to the point where, let's just say you have every municipality from Westchester County who wants to do this and we're kind of out, would some of that supply be getting pumped in from Pennsylvania or other places?
So we're looking at it from upstate New York, and as I say, through this transmission project. Before that time, we'll stay in this mode that we're in now, where we're buying renewable energy certificates. We're still buying, paying that generator. That generator is still dumping into the grid in New York with a net greening effect, but it's not physically, those electrons are not reaching our subgrid down here in Westchester. So this kind of phase-wise thing, there's capacity out there now. If everybody joins in, we'll still be able to secure supply and recs to support that. And then going forward, you know, we're gonna take up this transmission line. We're actually sort of teaming up with a big real estate group in New York City, because now New York City has this incredibly aggressive local law which says that building owners have to either achieve a really high energy efficiency standard, or they're buying renewable power as defined as delivered renewable power, like we're talking about. So for some of them, that's actually the most sensible way to go. So some of these buildings, you know, you want to retrofit, it's like a big deal. So we've got a lot of power going into these discussions with the transmission companies and the generators, and so there's a good chance it can happen.
But for the record, there's enough RECs, there's enough renewable energy certificates to match if all of Westchester wanted to join the CCA, but in terms of physical generation coming down here,
I'm still a little confused about the transmission line part of it. So you're saying that the green energy that they're creating, that they're building upstate, there's no way to actually get that energy down? It can't run on like the wires that we already have?
Yeah, there's definitely, in fact, residents down in this area in Westchester pay a total of $50 million in additional charges for congestion, which is related to that pipeline being too narrow. So that's one of the elements that we're taking into the discussion. We're saying, look, if we can get those dollars to go into the construction of this, and substitute for paying a charge, relieve that congestion, we open up the market so that these wind farms and solar farms are going to be able to move their power down here. And so the construction is in tandem with new generation capacity. So the transmission company has actually already negotiated several rounds with like 3 or 4 terawatt hours worth of generators up there, taking it to FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and got that level of approval. So
it's not that the green energy is different, it could go on the same kind of wires, it's just not enough of that.
Yeah. It's I think the metaphor of a pipeline is fair enough.
And this transmission of green power down to Westchester is where we're going. We wanted you to see the vision. Like, CCA is amazing, but we're going to continue our work. But importantly, CCA is the first step.
Well, it's also, if I take it in another direction, so it's a platform for that, which is needs everybody to jump on, but it's also that first and kind of easiest engagement with every resident, because in actual fact, electricity, if you look at that pie chart of your carbon footprint, electricity is about 23% or something, grid electricity. Buildings is another 30-something, transportation is 30-something, then you've got, some other slivers. So getting at this part, as complex as it seems, is actually easier than like the building energy stuff, right? Because those are one building after another. Those are sort of more intrusive. So my feeling is, when we set up a community energy venture like this, that's that first connection with someone about making them a part of, this big job we have ahead of us. So that's another role that it plays. That's why the customer service element of this, I think, is almost as big and important as anything else to do, because someone calls us and we're helping them understand something, we've now made them a partner, because we're taking the time to talk to them about this.
And how much solar are you actually generating in the local Westchester area by putting solar panels on like warehouse rooftops? Has that grown a lot, or is that
before community solar came around, we had the Solarize Westchester program, which was trying to drive individual rooftop solar. And it was one of the earliest and most successful programs in New York State, and a lot of what they've done to model the statewide programs came out of that, and it was tremendously successful. But that amounted to about 6 megawatts worth of supply, and they do 600 installations, which is amazing, but it's really kind of a drop in the bucket. The nature of Westchester is such that we just don't have enough, land or roof space to be able to do it all locally. That's just the reality. Not so if you go to, just up north of it, Dutchess County or whatever, they've got room for these things across the river. So there's no way that we're going to achieve our goals without importing renewable energy. That said, I think every rooftop that we can engage in this is a great thing. It's always better to do it locally. You've got local installers working on it, and there's less loss from the transmission because there's always a little bit of that. So we want to continue to push that.
When I first heard about community solar about a year and a half ago, I asked the question at the time whether you had any success with multiple landlords piecing together a project. And I was told no at that time. I wonder if you made any progress in that.
I think you would, at best, you would do it as kind of a collective bid, but it's still going to be like a meter at a time and a roof at a time. So we're actually, and this is going to be interesting for the municipality. We're, supposing you might have a big DPW building or something where it has potential there. We are just starting now to hook up with NIPA to go out to all the municipalities and offer for them to participate in a bulk RFP to develop solar on any municipal properties. Under the county's doing it, so we're kind of piggybacking on their RFP, and those projects will also be executed as community solar projects. Reason being, the numbers work out better that way. The way the state has structured the tariff for these, if you just take that power directly versus subscribing it out to your residents, you do much better subscribing it out, and the municipalities will end up with a pretty nice lease fee for those roof surfaces and spaces that they might have available to do these projects. We're going to be having a workshop on that, I think on the 28th or something, so we'll be in touch with the municipality about that.
I have a question. Once the program is in place, we're 2 months in, 3 months in, what happens when a new resident moves into the village? Are they automatically enrolled in the program, or do they have to fend for themselves before this program takes place?
Any new customers that, or any new people who move into a municipality, on like a quarterly basis, there's like a quarterly refresh, and so a new batch of notification letters go out to any new residents. So they still have that 30-day window to do their research and make a decision.
Thank you.
Historically, do you know the opt-out rate for the 150 or the 27 municipalities, roughly 1%, 2%?
It could be 1 to 10% depending on the municipality, but most of that is moving. So when you move, you close your account. So actually, we've maintained pretty steady numbers over the past 3+ years that we've been in operation, because people move out, but then people move in. So actually, we just started getting these add drop reports so that we actually see how many people opt out, how many people moved, how many people opted in. And I was blown away. I was like, there haven't been people opting out. Like, everyone's been moving out. Like, it was literally like,
Mobility.
yeah, 5 times as many opt-outs, or 5 times as many people were moving out than actually opted out. So that was a pleasant surprise for me. But
in the initial mailing, I think the average we probably saw was about 5%. So you do the first mailing, and then on those refreshes, at that point, it's pretty much like a move out, move in balance. So you do get some opt-outs. You get people who they feel like this is a philosophical affront. Or they feel like, even though they just have to raise their hand and we can opt them out, you feel like you're like telling them what kind of iPhone to buy, And so
I mean, some people don't like
that,
change. You know, when we've kind of had your whole life. I remember, my grandpa signed up for an ESCO, and he was paying like 15 cents per kilowatt hour. You know, right now our green rate is less than 8 cents. So he was paying way too much, and he was like, I don't know if I want to go with another. I'm like, it's my company. Like, we're not, you know, come on. He's like, well, Con Ed. I'm like, no, come on. So yeah, some people just don't like change.
So 2 questions. One is, we all know that the capacity for generation is going to be reduced when energy closes. Next year, the second one will be gone, so we're closed. So do programs like this help insulate people, because you know what's going to happen? The rates are going to go up. That's how it works. Supply and demand. If it wasn't Westchester Power, any sort of cooperative group, would that help residents because there's going to be issues with pricing? Second question is, there's a lot of loss of power when it's transmitted from one place to another. Are there technologies that are being created to reduce that loss of power as they go through transmission lines? Because I know in a traditional sense that's always an issue. A lot of power is lost as it travels along the line. So two questions.
So I'd say on the Indian Point side, you know, there's a lot of speculation about what'll happen when it all shuts down. We know it's all shut down before, so it's not going to be like, you know, we won't be able to get power. Unfortunately, one of the responses to that was to build a huge gas-fired power plant up in Cricket Valley, which, you know, is going to be obsolete as soon as it's built. But that'll be again one guarantee that it's not, you know, it's not going to like drop out on us. And meanwhile, as I say, we're working on this, and the question is kind of related because yes, there are losses coming down. The HVDC technology does see lower losses, but there's still losses. But also the prices of the renewables are now, as you know, coming way down as well. And you've got a stack of costs that happen in between there, but they're coming way down. So that, in a large part, makes up for a lot of those losses in a sense as well. So it's a real factor. I wouldn't worry about Indian Point. Now, if we had a contract which just locked us in at a nice rate and spanned that period, and then then we'd be sure of some stability. That would help. The units are getting shut down pretty soon. You can't really project because when we go out to buy, remember all our suppliers are going out in the forward market and locking in, and hedging. So they're kind of picking up what's happening in the future anyway a little bit. But these are big, smart companies. We visited Constellation. They have essentially a gymnasium full of people on trading desks, and they own generation themselves, and they buy generation. So, we get competitive rates and get
wouldn't
the
a
best we
group
can out of
wouldn't
it.
a group buying thing be better than sort of like if I'm an individual, just conceptually, and all this stuff's going on in the energy market, and I have no buying power. One person. So
what's interesting is, if you want to go out there, and like some people change bank accounts every 6 months because they get the free gift card or something, So if you want to play this like day trading, you can hop from teaser rate to teaser rate with the ESCOs. You could beat us, because nobody's going to give us a bid for 120,000 or 100,000 customers at that kind of rate, because those rates depend on knowing that 80% of the people are going to ride through it and then start paying those higher rates, So it's hard to say. We're going to get the most competitive rate. That's a real rate, for that term, because it's also term related.
And conceptually, you're absolutely correct. That's why this program was created. We have a massive purchasing power. Together we do have market clout to get better deals. So,
You might have said it, I missed it. What's the term of the contract? It's a fixed rate for what, 12 months?
we get bids for different contract lengths, so we can get an 18-month, a 24-month, 32, 34. They'll give us several options, and then we choose the lowest one that is also the best contract term. So
Generally won't exceed, like our longest one so far has been 3 years. So, and then the current, I think the NICEAG one is 19 months
19
or
months.
something.
Yeah, because 19 months was the weird sweet spot. Yeah, where it was a good rate.
Yeah.
We then don't have to worry about it. We worry about it.
Yeah, yeah, we do all that.
Right. But each time we renew, there's a whole process that's, again, defined by the Public Service Commission, the orders that give us life. And so you hear about it way before, because we have to come out, visit the communities, do another outreach session, come in front of the board. We have to establish the criteria for the next bid, so everybody needs to kind of get on board and, triangulate on where we want to be on that. After we go out for bids, it's awarded. Now they've added. Now we have to do a post-award community session just to say, hey, there's new price, new contract. Go out for the letter. So it's not like we disappear, but you don't have to. We're responsible for making sure everything happens. So
We don't have to go through an opt-out period again, do we? When the contract's up?
you do actually when the contract's up, we go out for bids again, because the regulation is that you've now changed. You have new terms and conditions. You have a new supplier. People need to be alerted to that. So the way this program is structured today, you still have to do
But
it.
that
If the rate
opt-out-
dropped, let's say the rate drops.
The rate did drop between our first and second contract, and yes, we sent out those notification letters, but they go out before the contract expires so that it's seamless. So if you don't opt out, you'll just go from one contract to the second. It won't be, there won't be like a month where you get kicked back to Con Ed, but when we are doing those pricing targets and we're setting their criteria, we get all these municipalities in the same room over 1 or 2 days, and we show them everything we're looking at. We make sure everyone's on the same page, everyone wants the same terms. Everyone signs a MOU, a memorandum of understanding, and as long as the criteria is met in the bids, then we go ahead and choose the lowest.
What we do try to do, or what we're asking the DPS now, the Department of Public Service, is and when we make this change, we have to do the letter, but on the bill, instead of putting the supplier name, put the program name. Because what happens is, again, there's a bunch of people who, they get the letter, they think it's junk mail, they don't read it. And then all of a sudden the supplier changes on their bill, and they're like, who's this? We used to be Constellation, now I have so-and-so. If it just came through as Westchester Power, you got your letter, new price, new terms, whatever. So we're actually going up to DPS next week, again, to have more discussions on those kind of things. Constantly trying to improve the communications.
Because we have a seat at the table.
So does the municipality then have to continue to opt in every contract cycle,
Yes.
or they can opt out?
Yeah, it's a new contract.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the basic nature of the contract is the municipality is awarding to the winning bidder the right to supply on an opt-out basis. So in a sense, it's not your contract like you're buying something. You're awarding this right. That lets the supplier send a request into to the Con Ed and say, we're enrolling these people, and then we run this opt-out process. So you are a contracting party. When the new contract comes, we'll have to sign that and reauthorize that participation.
What has been your experience in terms of communities opting out after a contract is finished? I mean, have you had any? Zero.
No communities have opted out. And when we started this program, we actually had 20 municipalities. So we've had 7 communities join since we started. Some of those slid into the first contract because they really wanted to be a part of it. Croton got into our first contract, and then we had a few more join in the second contract.
Has there been much intermunicipal discussion or controversy when you sit down the different representatives from the different towns and villages in terms of going ahead with the contract, or is there much discussion? Is there any disharmony, or how has that worked?
There hasn't been. When we renewed the Con Ed contract, we had 2 meetings, so people were invited to come to either or both. And for the most part, we knew that the CCA worked, so that this was in between our very first contract and our second. The biggest change was that we were switching from national recs to New York State recs. So all of our green electricity, instead of being matched maybe in Texas, was now happening in New York. Everyone was pretty stoked on that. And then, you know, young, okay. But then, you know, on the pricing, you know, we look back, we look at the previous 12 months, 24, you know, I went back as far as 5 years to look at where the Con Ed rates were, and then we get indicative pricing from our suppliers, and so really, you know, we provide a lot of information, and we already kind of know where we're going, and then the municipalities, you know, we wait and see if there's any objections, and so far there really hasn't been.
So that's been pretty smooth so far. You know, as we go forward and we start looking at this direct supply, there may be some new widgets that go into these contracts to allow for all that, and maybe a slightly different structure. When we first formed the program, we started putting this thing together around 2013. We finally got it approved in 2015 after we sent it up to the legislature. It got passed through the legislature, went over the governor's desk, got vetoed because he wanted to pass it to the Public Service Commission and have it run that way. And it's a tremendous amount of work. We had sessions literally with 20 municipal lawyers on conference calls working on these contracts. So they have been through the ringer at this point, and you know, they're in good shape. But that's not to say as we go forward, you know, we'll innovative new developments. We're trying right now, like, in order to hook up to these generators up north, those guys have to have financiers that know they've got a 10-year commitment. We're going to try to sandwich some party in between to take that commitment. So there's going to be some new contract structures that come out of this, and will we have to talk and figure it out? Yeah, maybe, but that's not today. Today we're still talking about the basic program as structured, you know.
I just have a question about smart metering. I know they were installed, or Con Ed was installing like smart meters in our neighborhood, I think maybe last year, which enabled them to charge different prices at different times of the day. I've heard you mention the cost would be fixed here, so that would not be part of this program.
That's a great question, and we have mulled that over and discussed that with other CCAs in the state, you know, where that's going. It suggests that that on the energy side, right now, Con Ed is running those kind of time of use rates against their distribution charges, but the implication is maybe we should be doing on the energy side as well. That would be fiercely complex for us to try and come up with the rate structures to match that, and so some who are out there, you know, working on these developments are saying we've got to be looking at that. Others are saying, you know, no, if you want to be making those commitments to the generators in a real, you know, consistent, fixed way, and have the financiers all lined up and everything, it's easier to do it fixed. And so I don't know where that's going exactly. You know, we can also think about sort of backdooring into exploiting that capability as well, where maybe we run programs where it's not the rate that's varying, but there's some kind of incentive that comes through, you know. So the key piece of that is actually getting access to the data. In theory, under the, you know, where the discussions are with the state and the regulatory agencies so far, in theory we're supposed to have access to it, but you know, where the rubber hits the road, you know, they'll say that, and then you have to actually negotiate with the utilities, and you know, they want to get fees for that, and so we haven't figured out all that out yet. But you're absolutely right to point that out as an important development, and we want to make sure that we exploit it too, because it is an opportunity to smooth the load curves. Now, you know, against that same load curve question, we're also looking very hard at storage, right? And in fact, the schema for the direct supply, in order to maximize what's going through that pipeline, you actually want to have storage on both ends to account for both the intermittency on the supply side and the demand side load changes too. So that's something, you know, made a few visits over to Buchanan and suggested to them, oh, you're trying to figure out what to do with that site? Great place to put storage because you, by the way, you've got this huge high voltage substations and all that are just sitting there waiting to be exploited. So that's something we're looking at very hard too, which is kind of related, dealing with those load shapes.
And actually, just to go back for a second, we actually took bids for time of use rates when we went out for bids for the second contract. We do recognize the importance of time of use rates, and we had a lot of customers that were on time of use rates. So we were really hoping that we were going to get a good bid, and we got a bid, and it was just way too high, and we wouldn't have been comfortable with that. So we stuck with the fixed rate, but as Dan said, we're looking at all solutions, all options. As you can see, we've got a wealth of knowledge, and trying to make it work. Any other questions?
Great. We, as Jasmine said, in order for you guys to give your residents, adequate exposure to this, we're ready to go anywhere, in any medium, whatever you think is effective, and you know better than us what that might be. So we were open to your suggestions on that, and hope to continue this dialogue for the next period. You guys discuss it internally, come up with other questions, come visit you down at the village, whatever works for you.
And I've got a stack of my business cards here if anyone didn't want. All right.
Thanks,
Thank you
everybody.
all.